Red Script Studio presents Living Vicariously in the Trauma That Binds series, Aftermath of Addiction with Mike Jarrell. Caution. The Trauma That Binds series contains mature subject matter that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, Podcast Nation, and welcome back to another episode of the Trauma That Binds series, a segment of Living Vicariously. Today, we have the utmost pleasure to be speaking with Mike Jarrell. Mike was a longtime addict, but was able to turn it around and is now a mentor, life coach, and author. So let's get Mike on the line to share his story.
You hear me?
Hello, Mike.
That's me.
Think you
Can you
keep
hear me
muting
now?
Yeah, I think you keep muting yourself by accident there, fella.
I did.
No worries, no worries. How are you?
Doing great. A little exhausted, but I'm doing great.
Good. Well, I'm glad we were able to make the time today. I know you're busy with your welding work there, so I appreciate you making the time to come on the show. So why don't we just start off by you telling the listeners a little about yourself, your backstory, how we got connected, and kind of what you hope to accomplish.
Obviously we got connected through. I was searching Facebook. I have a bunch of groups, and in order to do my work, I keep in contact with these groups, and just always searching for speaking opportunities, and podcasts are great practice for stages and things like that. So I just a little bit about me. I grew up. I was born in Georgia. I spent most of my life in New Mexico and Texas. And around 1997 or 8ish, I went to Michigan for 20 years. But I grew up in a very chaotic, abusive home. I eventually led to drug habits and criminal activity, and eventually prison. And I went after I got out of prison. I was just like, I wanted better for myself. So once I got a parole, I left Michigan. Moved around a couple times and landed here in Corbin, Kentucky, and about 3 years ago, and decided to get on the right track and start helping people, because I knew that there's more people out there like myself, that I wasn't the only person out there, and just wanted to help people not only recover from addiction, but also recovery is a multifaceted thing. It could be, there's addiction to trauma. There's addiction to anything really, but also help people that have gone through trauma, because, trauma and drug addiction go quite hand in hand for people. So obviously there's a lot more to it, but there's been a long road of 40 something years of, living with pain and regrets and, dumb mistakes and all kinds of things. Just about anything you could imagine. I was a very, very outgoing person, as far as, if I did anything, it was to the max. So, and that including my drug habits. So yeah, that's just the gist of my backstory. Just a lot of chaos, abuse, and trauma, and I mean brutal abuse by my stepdad. I know a lot of people are abused out there, and granted, no trauma is better or worse than the other. It's all trauma's trauma. But when I say brutal abuse, I mean I had 67 hospital visits before I was 16 years old. So it was I was hit like I was a grown man, even from the age of 2 and 3 years old. So that's about the quickest way I can explain a little bit about my backstory. But as we go along, I'll delve a little more in more depth and detail. So
Yeah, no worries there, Mike. It's whatever you feel comfortable sharing right now, and I appreciate what you have shared with me. And I'm I come from a broken home as well. I have a stepfather, so I can understand again up to an extent of what you went through that way. But when it comes to the abuse, man, no child should go through that, especially from a step parent. They're like
You're right.
they're the ones that's supposed to be taking care of you the most now that your real father is either gone, not in the picture, or whatever the situation may be. As you know, mine committed suicide in '98, so it was one of those situations where my mom met somebody that didn't work out because he was semi abusive towards us, and my mom didn't appreciate that. Nothing again to the extent you unfortunately
Right.
went through, like pulling the ear, slap on the face, like kicking the ass, like that type of shit, right? Nothing to the like extreme. Uh, but then she met my stepdad, Rick, and so much better, and he is supportive of everything that I'm doing now. So it really is up to that person that is supposed to take care of you, and
Right.
it's just unfortunate, Mike. And again, it's just
No,
right.
oh, I'll reiterate here. Like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's
I want to
okay.
make this point kind of clear that my biological dad I haven't seen since I was 2. He's in prison the rest of his life. Haven't seen him, don't know him. But after my mom and dad, the man I refer to as my dad is the one that's passed away, the one that was brutally abusive. That eventually, I did forgive him, and I miss my parents. They're both gone now, day to day. But my mom also met before she passed away a very good man that treated her with dignity and respect, and treated us kids as if we were his own. I mean, granted, I had a hard time with it because I was 19 at the time, or almost 20 when they met. But I mean, he took real good care of my mom, and till the day she died, and was just a good person for her. So I'm thankful that she had that, and that he still, he lives in Michigan, but he's still around. That that we can, you know, uh, bond with him as well because he was very good to my mother. So
No, that's amazing, Mike. I'm glad that your mom found that person
yeah,
as well, and then you also found that person to have that bond you were supposed to have with that other step parent that was there. So now with
absolutely.
now with all that being said, what some of these early childhood memories play a huge factor in how you grew up, right? What what do you think was the most significant part that made you kind of transition into the drugs, the drinking, and the gang?
Oh, actually, I didn't remember this. I had this huge memory block. I couldn't remember nothing after I was 8 years old for some reason. And I used to work for an entertainment company, and they had these hypnotists, and I'd watch these kids do this funny stuff. Well, I was just jokingly volunteered to get up there, um, and when I like kind of came to, I guess if you will, people had this weird look on their face, and I mean, it like this mortified look, and I'm like, what is going on here? What did I do? What stupid thing did I do? Well, the guy come up to me afterwards, and he said, there's some things that you're holding on to that. Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I can't remember them though." Well, my mom divorced my stepdad when I was like a year or two old, and they met my stepdad that same year. But my biological dad had held her down, poured cologne on her face, and set her face on fire, and I was there. Um, so I think those things, played a significant role because, as a child, I tell people all the time when I'm trying to, coach them or mentor them that the things that you go through that you're as an adult, you're never defined by your past, but the things you go through as an adult your children see. And if you keep going through them, because as an adult you don't have to be defined by what you went through, but if you keep letting those things happen, then it's not your fault that you're going through them, but it's you keep putting yourself in those situations, because you're not healed. It's not because you're doing it on purpose. You're not healed. You have to heal, and you have to get your kids help too. But back in, when I was growing up, that sort of thing you didn't talk about. Those things weren't, nobody wanted to discuss those things, and nobody wanted that stuff out in the open, because of society where we're oh, what is everybody going to think attitude, and that can't play a role. So it affected me really big. And the things I was going through even thereafter, with my stepdad. I mean, my parents, my biological dad and my mom were, 17 and 18 when I was born. My mom's two sisters were 13 and 11 when I was born. So they're very young people. She met my stepdad. He was 22. He never had no children before. He didn't know how to handle a kid, and especially one that was probably is into everything and is, you know, talkative because I was, a very smart person, turn, talking and reading and things at a very young age and getting into everything because I was just curious about the world. So, I'm sure that was hard to handle, but, and it doesn't make it right, but it does play a role. So, understand that, these traumas that you go through, your kids go through as well. And they hang on to that. And, if anybody thinks a baby's stupid, they're far wrong, because the younger you are, the more developmental your brain is, and you learn quickly. That's why they tell people, if you want to teach your kid a guitar, start them out as young and things, and they'll learn it quicker than as you're an adult. So, and that goes for bad things as well as good. So, that it played a significant role in, my drug usage and how I reacted, and just my whole home environment did. That's what we call the big lie, that your how you grow up and your parental influences, they say, don't affect you that much, and that's not true. It is very true. I don't know how many times I've said certain things like, man, that sounded just like my dad. Lordy, have mercy. I said I'd never turn out like him. But it does have a huge influence. And more than you realize. And I don't care how much you hide it from your kids, especially if it's like, say, a woman getting hit by a significant other. Your kids see it, they know it, they feel it. You can't hide nothing from them. They're always watching. So it will definitely influence them, and they will have issues from it.
No, you're absolutely right, Mike. The kids are a lot smarter than what we give them credit for, unfortunately, and it's up to us to try and make sure that they can fully understand the capacity of what's going on, but at the same time, we don't think they can because they're just kids, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing about it is that, you how should I put this? You're if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of your kids. Because I know there's people out there say, well, my kids come first. No, that's not quite true. You need to come first, and how you let someone treat you is your kids will grow up letting someone treat them that way too, because it becomes their norm. They think it's normal. Like when I used to tell people how brutally abused that was, their mouths would hit the floor, and I'm just like, what? It's no big deal. I mean, it was to the point that even that when my dad would be nice, it made me feel so weird and out of place that I'd had to provoke him to hit me, just because that was our normal, And people are like, "How could that? That's just sounds weird, or you're messed up." No, it's not messed up. That's just what my family. That's what my family dynamic was back then. That's what I knew as my normal. So, and I understand that is not the correct way of thinking, but that takes a lot of healing, a lot of work, and a lot of help. I mean, I've been through years of, psychiatrist, psychologist, counseling. I didn't, there was not always that. There's a lot of it I did on my own, but there's not a lot of it, not everything I did on my own, I should say. Because your cognitive skills get severely damaged, not only with drug use, but with severe trauma as well. And cognitive skills are very important in rational decision making, and how you do things in life, and can help determine success. And it's not just used in recovery, but it's used in every aspect of life. Trauma healing, you can use cognitive behavior therapy for learning how to build a business or anything. It works in all aspects of life. It's a very important function of the brain that gets damaged with trauma, toxicity, habitual drug use, things like that.
Now, is the CBD therapy something that helped you cope with all this trauma that you've experienced throughout your life?
It has recently, most recently. I didn't learn about it until I did have some background in, with psychology and throughout my life, but I never, because back then, psychology focused on what was wrong with you. And it's just in recent years that they started doing the positive psychology, which works much better, and CBT. Well, I didn't learn about CBT until I was in prison. They used it as they called it ASAT, which is Advanced Substance Abuse Treatment, and it's really not a substance abuse treatment. They tell you that when you go in there, it's a cognitive reprogramming of your brain, a rewiring or whatever. It's relearning cognitive skills that you lose during these times, and but even that didn't hit me until after I was on parole, and I started realizing that, hey, I don't want okay, now I'm starting to see what they were teaching. I don't want this for my life, and then was able to apply the concepts. But yeah, it has helped tremendously, and it's one of the most untalked about forms of therapy, but it is huge in healing and any kind of therapy dealing with mental health.
Yeah.
But it has to be worked. You have to work the process, but you have to learn it. You can't just pick that up once those areas are damaged. You have to learn that stuff, and it's real easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a little bit of work, and it takes that first step and some effort. It's really, that's that easy. But after 40 years, it took me 40 something years to learn this, to figure this out. So it's not an easy road when you're not listening to nobody, you're not paying attention. You just got to set in your ways that this is how life is, and that's not the truth. So I try to reiterate that these are things I used in my life to help heal, and it's what worked for me, and it works for everybody that I know has put it to work. It's one of those things that, because we all have cognitive brain function. So why wouldn't it work for everybody? We're all different in how we heal and our process things, yes, but the area of the brain that we're trying to work on and heal is very much the same for everybody.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right because my wife did the cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, and then the next step that I think the dialectic or something to that effect. There's a D in there somewhere, but yeah, she did that program for about 6 months, and it really helped her out with what she was going through at the time.
Absolutely. And there's also, neuro linguistic programming, which is NLP therapy. There's RBT, which I can't remember exactly what that is, but it's just similar to C, very more specific to certain situations, whereas cognitive, it covers the whole, because your whole temporal lobe there is where the cognitive area of the brain is, and that's what gets affected the most. It's where critical thinking is used. It's where most of your brain activity is at for day to day you know function. You're not That's why they say, when you're a drug addict, those areas get damaged, and you take risks that you normally wouldn't take, just even though you know the consequences, because you're not thinking rationally, because those areas are not working, they're not firing properly, they're all out of whack, and you have to relearn that, because it's not that's one part that doesn't heal itself without actually changing your thought patterns, because like we always say that thoughts create emotions that create behaviors, and most of the times when those cognitive areas are damaged, you're going off emotions from your thoughts, and that creates your behaviors, rather than having what we call emotional intelligence, or EQ, the emotional quotient. It's just as important as IQ, and it's managing your emotions and being able to understand what they are, realize what they're doing to you, and how to you know accept them and be okay and walk through life and know that those are perfectly normal emotions, but you don't have to create a behavior based off of it. So
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mike. Yeah. Now, when we were talking, or you had mentioned some other stuff that you had done in your past, one of them was joining the military, and you spent some time in Bosnia. Now, how did that affect your mental health?
that made it worse. I went into the military to get away from my dad, because my dad had went AWOL twice, and I mean, he went the last time was for 10 years, and I mean, he was about to go to federal prison for the rest of his life, um, because of that, because he hated the military so bad. Well, I joined to get away from him, and I smiled every time I signed one of them papers. I was smiling, and this man, I've never seen him cry before in his life, was saying, "Please don't do this." And I went in there, and I also had urges in me because of what he did to hurt, not people necessarily, but to hurt him. Every time I saw that, I mean, there was times that I grew up even wanting him to die, and praying for that. And it wasn't the right way of thinking, but it's just because I needed that escape, because I didn't know, I didn't know if I was going to die sometimes or not. And So I went in there to get away from them, and I go to Bosnia, and it was absolutely atrocious at what human beings will do to each other. And to see some of those things was just ungodly horrific. I mean, it's not something I really even care to talk about still to this day. It's hard to deal with. I mean, we want to think that our world and our bubble is how society says it is. It's not, because there's society's world and there's the real world. And I've seen both sides of it, and it's an ugly place. And but it's good to know those things. Know that it exists, so you can strive to be better yourself, and sheltering yourself or sheltering somebody else from it isn't going to save them from it. Sometimes that pushes them further towards it. But just to see what those people were doing to each other, it was absolutely just it was like something out of a horror movie. And that plays a real big role in it. There I found things that I was fascinated in that disturbed me, that to know that I was, just because it was the whole fact that how can someone be that cruel and harsh but be okay with it. And it really it made me think that, okay, what if I was capable of doing that? Or would it, because we all have that evil part of us. It really makes you think, but it overwhelmed me as well. um I came home really messed up.
Unfortunately, a lot of our soldiers do come back pretty messed up from what they've seen. Like I don't know if you've listened to it, but you know that we have an Iraq War veteran on the show, Tim Palmer, and he himself
Yeah.
has shared personally with me some stuff that he's had seen over there, and yeah, no, it's just you're right. You have to stop and think how someone can be so cruel in what they do and sleep at night after doing it, type of thing.
And the thing is like I said, talking a little bit about it with people that understand is helpful, but I still just don't like to even bring it up, because some people don't. I hear people all the time, "Oh, I'm so mad, I'll kill that person." You don't really understand the implications of that, or what doing something like that brings and entails. Until you have to do it, and it might be justified, but you can ask. I don't know anybody out there, even in the military, that's had to do it, that doesn't have nightmares over it. And that's one part. See, I suffered not only from PTSD, but complex PTSD, the CPTSD, because it's all the trauma, from long-term trauma. And they say you can heal PTSD to a certain point, but CPTSD will stay with you for the rest of life. Well, that's not necessarily true, because I manage my CPTSD pretty well, but the nightmares are the only things that I cannot get a handle on. And I've tried medications for it, like Prozocin and things, and it actually that stuff makes my dreams worse. It's supposed to make you not dream at all. But it's one of those things where that's the only part that I can't manage, but the nightmares are some of the most horrific things, and they're mixtures of my childhood and Bosnia. So it's even, there's nights I wake up just terrified, and other nights I wake up just angry. And I have to get up every morning, before I go to work, at least an hour or two, and ground myself before I can even talk to anybody. Because I'm just in that mode. I'm ready to snap. And it's like the trauma from my dad. I was 22 before I got a handle on, if anybody made a sudden movement around me, especially like if how people want to make you flinch, I would flip out about that. I mean, I got in many fights over that. It's just it was something that I couldn't handle. Just even a sudden move around me, and it was instant snap. So it's very, very difficult to manage without help. And there's so many people out that know they are having these issues and don't get help. I mean, think about the Chris Kyle situation. Very good man that was shot to death by another vet that didn't have any help. But, you know, so it's And there's people out there that aren't in the military that are going through PTSD and trauma like that that need help as well. I mean, it's not just a military thing, and that's been a common misconception. There are people out there that have trauma. Trauma causes post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a lot of people in this country suffering from that.
Well, and
Um,
you're right, and but when people think of trauma and PTSD, obviously they think of like the first thought is military because you guys go
right,
through so much, right? But it coming from you that again the basis that trauma is trauma and it happens to everybody, it just reinforces that point, right?
right, yep, yes. And here's the thing: is that like my trauma, like was so bad that I guess I could say that going in the military was kind of a vacation from that, but it really wasn't because it was just a different chaos. It wasn't the same chaos, but it was chaos nonetheless. Um, Toxicity is another one. That's a form of trauma that is absolutely chaotic on people right now, and unfortunately, as adults, we're putting ourselves back in those positions because we don't understand and know how to heal from it. Um, and that's a big one, and that's another one that leads back to addiction and things. Is that if you're in a toxic situation, that's a very traumatic experience. Because toxicity is and that manipulation and that gaslighting and things, those are not meant to, or they're not accidents. Those are very calculated, abusive methods of controlling somebody. So for the ladies, and there's guys out there that suffer through it too. I did myself for a long time. Is that if anybody is gaslighting or manipulating you, just because they gave you that love bombing and that nicety at first, get out. Because you're going to form a codependent relationship, and those are even harder to get out of. And it's not your fault that you're going through, but if you don't heal and you don't understand and are not aware of what you're doing, you're going to keep going back to it, which, it was sickening to me when I realized that I was letting people treat me that way. And a lot of my pain and suffering as an adult, it was on me. It was my fault because I kept putting myself in those situations because I didn't know I hadn't healed. I didn't know what to do. And then that's where the CBT came in, and then once I did that and I started setting boundaries for myself, those people started going away. I call it smart garbage. The trash started taking itself out. So
Now,
it's very important.
no, you're right. It is very important. And when you came back from Bosnia, how were you able to transition back to civilian life? Like obviously it wasn't an easy transition as you've already mentioned. Is that kind of when the turning point went to the drugs and the drinking harder core?
Well, I'd been into the drugs and stuff before that, but I had stopped to go in the military because I knew I wouldn't be able to do both. No, that made it even worse actually. That's when I started using using more heroin and things like that to kind of numb it. And basically, I asked people to kill me so I didn't have to kill myself. I said, somebody please kill me so I don't have to kill myself. I thought about death constantly. That's all I wanted to do was die. I wanted those thoughts to stop. There was everything that was going through my head from childhood to that point. I just wanted it to stop and end because it was constant, incessant. It was like here and there. It didn't stop constantly. Even to this day, I don't sleep a lot, because I work a lot, but it's just I'd rather not go through the nightmares. But my brain goes so nonstop. But I've found methods to, calm myself and refocus. But it's just it ramped up my drug use and things like that. It made things worse, and it made my behavior more dangerous, if you will. I was one that, like I said, I was balls to the wall. I didn't. It was 0 to 100 immediately. I used to do so many drugs just to see how far I could go before I died, and I mean, I'm talking a lot of drugs. And we'll get into it more, but right before I went to prison, I was doing up to 12 grams a day, 6 grams of heroin, 6 grams of methamphetamine, shooting it into my veins every single day. You know, And that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. I got caught with 140 grams of meth in my car, and I told them that was my personal, and they said there ain't no way you could do that much. I said that's only about 2 weeks worth.
Oh, gee.
So they
So,
just couldn't believe it.
uh,
Yeah.
I can't. I'm a little shocked myself there, Mike. So, what was the turning point for you then to finally quit it and become a life coach for others?
Well, it wasn't until I was after prison. Prison changed me. I was 40 years old when I went to prison first time. I gotten in trouble throughout my life in charge, but I see when I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer, and so I learned to study laws and things like that. So but also doing all the criminal activity is from such a young age, I knew that hey, if I'm going to be doing this, I better know the law because if I don't know the law, I'm going to be in and out of prison, and I don't want that. So I knew how to create, get through the loopholes and fall through the cracks a lot. Well, almost 40 years old, and I got pulled over with that 140 grams. I was with my ex-wife, and I was already in the car. Handed the drugs to the officer, said, "Here, this is his." He told me to hang on to it, and kind of just threw me under the bus there, but I understand why. But that was my turning point. Prison changed me. It kind of saved my life, not in the aspect that it's a reform, because prison is not reform. It is an industry. They don't care about you. It is a crime school. You learn how to be a better criminal in there. I came in there and I thought I knew a good portion about crime. I came out knowing that I could get even better and do more things. Like I learned a lot in there on different crimes and things. And I'm like, ooh. And I was in there basically only 2 years, but I learned real quickly that I was comfortable there. I could acclimate really quickly to it, and I didn't like that. That made me very nervous because it's not a place I wanted to be, you know. And I realized that anything you can get on the outside, as far as drugs, booze, anything like that, you can get in there, and it's actually easier to get in there. So it's not any different than on the outside. But I realized something, that it's a very dangerous place, and I had to change myself to understand that there is a lot of people that look very like they got your best interests and don't. So it taught me for on the outside that you can sit down at a table full of snakes and understand that you better be a badder one than they are, because people will try to look in your face, tell you they got your back, and then they'll turn right around and just destroy you. Um, but that when I was in there, I learned how to be okay by myself. That I didn't need people, around, especially the wrong kind of people, and that I didn't want this for my life. I had a 20-year tail, so I got two to 20 years. So if I messed up on parole, I could keep going back all the way up until 20 years, on this same charge, and I really didn't want that. So when I got out, I decided to start getting on a better path. Well, I was thrown right back into the wolves. I was even tethered to a drug house. I had to wear an ankle bracelet, and it was right at a drug house. So very difficult to try to get clean and away from all the BS when you're thrown right into the mix of it. But I made some moves. And thank God for COVID as well, because the parole office was shut down, so I didn't have to report as much. And if I would have had to report like most people do every 2 weeks and drop every 2 weeks, I've been absolutely in trouble all the time. But fortunately for COVID, that there. But once I got off parole, I decided it's time to go. I didn't wait. I didn't tell anybody. I had my best friend of 20 something years got me a bus ticket. He was on the road. He's a truck driver. His wife got me a shower at the truck stop. They put me on the bus, and I left and moved to Florida within 2 days of being off parole. And I didn't tell even family I was going. Couldn't. In order to get off that stuff, I had to get completely away from everybody I knew, all the situations I knew, and the familiarity. I had to pull myself out of that box and make myself a little uncomfortable and do something different. And I will say this, that it didn't happen right away. I relapsed many times until I got to Kentucky here, but I found and learned that relapse is a tool to adjust things, and it taught me the last part of my learning how to pick out toxic people and how to get away from that stuff, how to walk away with your head held high in dignity and know that you're going to be okay.
That's good, Mike. I appreciate that. And was this something when you got finished your say self and induced rehab there? Is that when you started writing your books and published your books in Deacon's Legacy, or when did those kind of come
Um,
about?
well, when I first moved to Florida, I was there about 6 months, and I went and helped a buddy work in Michigan a couple weeks painting some houses, and I was right back into doing drugs and stuff. At that point, and then I left again and went to Georgia, back where I was originally from, and I was with someone for 7 months, and that right there, I was still doing the drugs and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want this for my life. I came down here to get away from this. So when I started seeing the toxicity in that relationship, I'm like, okay, this is what I don't want for my life. This is where I need to set the boundaries. So I left there, left all my stuff, all my belongings behind, everything I'd built up and worked for. I stayed in a friend's barn for about 2 weeks, and my buddy from Michigan, the same one that got me the bus ticket, drove a semi down to Georgia, picked me up, and he dropped me off in Kentucky at my cousin's. I got a good job here. I was making $22 an hour. It wasn't the most ideal job because it's a factory job working with insulation, the hood liners and things on cars. They make that stuff, and it's very itchy and dirty. And I worked there for about 10 months, and I realized I wasn't happy there. I'm like, yeah, I'm making great money, but I'm not happy doing this. I just not having all that that extra money that doesn't make you happy. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So around December of 2022, I started taking some life coach courses because I'm like, I'm going to get back into this and see if I can help people, because I realized there's the good life, there's the meaningful life, and then there's the purposeful life. And I wanted that purposeful life. I wanted to wake up every day having a purpose and to do something, to contribute back, and to, I guess, kind of not really amend what I had done in my life because I couldn't change that, but to at least help others realize that they didn't have to suffer as long as I did. So, and it took me a while. I didn't, put a lot into it because they were self-studies. So, and you got to be real disciplined with that. Well, in January of 2023, I was fired for points that I did. Some of them I didn't even have. I didn't have that bad of attendance, but and I hit a stage of depression, and I didn't know what to do. So for about 2 months while I was waiting for my unemployment, I said, what am I going to do with myself? I can't just sit here in this apartment by myself and not do nothing. And so I said, you know what? Until I get another job or I get this unemployment, I'm going to do something with myself. I finished those courses. And in finishing those courses, I started meeting different people on, Facebook, and started rethinking how I was going to use my social media to do this business. And I said, you know what? Authorship, write some books that'll help get some credibility. So I sat down and I wrote those 2 books within 2 months of each other, and with in mind that people have short attention spans. That's why they're only 60 something pages each. They're easy reads. First one is, about, my life up until that point, and then the second one's about CBT and the science behind it, and, how I used it to help heal myself and find happiness in any situation. Well, just prior to this, I got to back up just a minute. September of 2022, a very close person to me and my brother had committed suicide, and I was going through some things, and that was the final turning point on how I got to that point, because that weekend I was just distraught, and I found out that I figured out that, hey, there's something better in this. And I found the peace in it, that he was peaceful. He was no longer suffering. I said, if I can find the good in his suicide, I can find the good in anything. Okay. No matter how chaotic it gets, because trust and believe that shit's going to hit the fan no matter what. Okay. But you have to understand, and what I understood is that if I can't control it, I can't change it. I have to accept it for what it is, take what I can learn from it, or take the good out of it, and throw the rest out that isn't serving you, because it doesn't matter. All right. It goes along with, a lot of people align themselves and say, well, what if everybody's going to think this if they say this about me? Who cares what they think? Okay. It doesn't matter. It's not their life. It's your journey. So I said, this is my life. I got to live it for me. I got to make me happy. If I can't make myself happy on the inside, how can I expect anybody else to make me happy? And so I started just, enjoying life, just being happy and being grateful for the things I had instead of what I didn't have. Okay. Even if it was a small step, if I made a small step of progress, I celebrated it because you know what? That small step leads to huge blessings. Okay. I didn't worry about the things I didn't have yet because ultimately I'll get there and I'll get them. And I realized also that I wasted so many years focusing on the past and all the pain. That's just a memory. I survived that. Yeah, it was horrible, but I survived that. I can definitely worry about what's in front of me because that's all we have is the here and now. And another guy I was watching said, if you don't believe that, if you think you want to know how to prove that, is just look at a clock. What time is it? It's right now. Even when that clock moves a minute ahead, it's right now still. You can't worry about the future because the future hasn't happened yet. But your future is determined by what you do today. So the steps you take today can create a better future. So if you're doing drugs and things like that, your future is not looking too bright. But if you turn it around and change it right here and right now, take those steps, your future can get much better. I've had just a total 180-degree turnaround from a year ago and some of the steps I've made. And like I said, I'm still not where I want to be, but I'm getting there. As long as you put that effort into it, your mind will get you there. One of the biggest things I've learned is that if your brain doesn't know thought from reality. So if you're keeping negative thoughts and negative things, your behavior is going to be negative and it's going to keep attracting negativity to you. But when you start thinking positively and you start, understanding that not everything is your fault, you can't control everything, just fix you. You can only control how you react. Just fix the things about you that you can control and live in positivity, depression, anxiety. None of that stuff can exist in a positive mindset, in a growth mindset. So that was how I got to all that, and I started writing about this stuff because I wanted people to know, hey, it's actually really simple. It took me 40 something years to learn it, but you don't have to be a dummy like me and be stubborn like me and take that long to learn it. You could actually learn it right now. You can do it right now. So, and that's what my whole basis is on, is that finding that true inner happiness, because there's two kinds of happiness. There's a hedonistic, which is a simplistic pleasure type that you got to keep getting. Oh, if I get this house, I'll be happy. When then you got the house, then you got to get the next thing. That's hedonistic. But the eudaimonic happiness is that true inner happiness within yourself, not relying on outside sources. Because as I've learned, if you rely on other things and other people to make you happy, you are sorely going to be disappointed. And your happiness is your responsibility, nobody else's. So that's kind of where I've gotten to the point of.
No, that's great, Mike. I'm glad you were able to. Well, it's it's I'm just out of shock, man. Like you went through so much and you got on these drugs and then you got off it and you made that choice to turn it around and you fucking did, man. Like that's amazing. And like I said in my message to you, I know we just met and whatnot, but I am proud of you for doing that. That is a huge
Appreciate that.
accomplishment to fucking anybody doing that. If you make those
Right.
steps, if you want it, if you absolutely want it, you will get it and you will do it. And Mike, you have done it, my friend.
Right. And I'm still doing it. I'm going to keep doing it until, and it's not just about money. I mean, yes, I got to make money in this business, but I work a full-time job until I get to that point. It's about the fact that for me, this is what drives me in my passion. I have a passion to help people because there's still people out there suffering, but you have to understand, people always say, oh, we'll do that. We got time, or, like I've experienced in relationships. Oh, we got to take some time. I need to, no, you know what? You have 24 hours in one day to do everything you can to be great. Okay. You don't have no more than that, because every night I go to sleep, this is what keeps me driven and keeps me so productive, is at night before I go to sleep, is I know one day that I'm not going to wake up. I know one day that I'm going to die, and I'm not afraid of that, but I want to know that when I do that, in those 24 hours prior, I did everything I possibly could to make this world a better place, to bring an impact and change of good on this world, and to tell everybody I know and show them, not just tell them, but show them that I love them, I cared about them, and that they knew where they stood with me. Not, I didn't have to tell them all, or, they knew without a doubt that that where they stood with me. Okay. Because that's all we have is right here, right now. You have 24 hours every day to be great. The same 24 hours everybody else does. What are you going to do with it? And that's kind of how I live things. I don't go through like with relationships. I've been single almost 8, 9 years, mostly by choice, and I do try to, you know, date and things like that. But if I'm not getting the same as that other person, I don't continue with it. I'll still be friends with them, but I don't continue with it because I've set those boundaries for myself. But I also know that if I want to be with someone and they're, our ideals align, it's going to take that work and that effort between both of us right here and right now, because putting things off and taking time, that doesn't do nothing. You can be with somebody for 30 years and realize that they're just a complete idiot. They don't care about you. And that's a harsh reality. Why do that? If you both put the effort in and work on it, it'll work for you, but you can't make somebody else do something. You can only control you and focus on you. So if they're not willing to do it, that's not your problem. That's theirs. Okay. But you only have that 24 hours to live life and be the best you can. And if you happen to be granted and lucky enough to wake up and find that other 24 hours, do the same thing. Keep continuing to strive to be better, because that's all you got. And you know what? Who wants to leave a legacy of, brokenness and, unsurety and not knowing, you make your life what it is. It's your journey. It's only yours, and you got to make it the best you can for you, or those around you, So, not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to agree, but, for the most part, you're the one who makes life what it is. Look at all these stars and things like that. They were not always stars. They didn't always have this money. They just had a different mindset. And unfortunately, that's what, I feel that the government and churches have keeping from us. And because I read the book The Secret, that's what got me started on this path. And Dr. Dwayne Dwyer, he talks a lot about this in the universe and manifestation. But it's not really manifesting. It's just going out and it has a lot of energy and attraction, but going out and taking the steps to make it, you can do it. The information's out there. There's enough money in this world for everybody to be rich. You just got to figure out how to be creative, how to do it, because it's a dog eat dog world. It's competitive. Not everybody gets those trophies. You have to understand that you got to be great at what you do. And, it's not the old fixed mindset where you either got it or you don't. It's not like that. You have to go get it. You can do anything you want to do, be anything you want to be. You just got to work for it a little bit, and it's really not all that difficult. Like when I first started this endeavor, I had no money. I was broke. I didn't know how to start a business with no money, but I found out, and I've spent some money, as I've had it to improve things, or like, my studio lights and my better video camera and stuff like that. But those are things I've worked for. And, because I've been doing the steps, and I found a lot of research. There's a lot of free ways to get PR press, all kinds of things. I've been published in JLA magazine. I've done, this is my sixth podcast, and these are great resources. And eventually, the more you do, somebody's going to notice. So, and I'm not doing it for the fame. I'm doing it to help people. But these are great ways to get it out to the masses. Because even if I can help one person, that's a huge victory. That's a huge win. I don't count accomplishments. I count the small little efforts to make someone's life better or help them. Then that I've done my part. But then they'll go out and spread the message, and it spreads like wildfire. So I just do everything I can with the best of my ability. And like I said, I don't sleep much, so why not use that time to work and be better and research when nobody else is up.
No, that's amazing, Mike. That's truly amazing, man. It's oh no, it is what it is. It's true. Like I usually have a hard time trying to find the words after someone has shared their experiences, their story. I'm just kind of stuck in a state of shock and awe and just admiration, and it is what it is, man. And again, I appreciate you for coming out onto the show and wanting to share all this with your with the listeners, now your listeners as well, and your audience. So
Absolutely.
right, so
Absolutely.
it's absolutely great. And so for
I have to
Mike,
say real quick. I'm
what's
sorry. I
no
just have to say real quick. I've been shocking on myself sometimes. It just makes me happy that I can actually give back because, it's like a friend, a close friend of mine, like a sister, said to me, despite all you've been through, and rather than harbor that grudge and hate, you still want to help people, because I've been shit on a lot in life, but I don't care. It is what it is. Like you said, I don't have to let that define me. I don't have to let what other people did to me define me. And the other thing to that is, because a lot of people say, well, this person said that about you. So what? That's a reflection of them. That what they say about me ain't none of my business. They ain't going to stop me. It ain't going to hurt me. They don't sign my paycheck. And the people that really know me and know what I'm trying to do, they know that's not true. So why do I got to worry about what they say? Let them be miserable and think that, because then I'm not going to be miserable. That's how I kind of approach it.
no,
So
that's completely fair, man, and then that's great. Now, what does the future hold for Mike? What do you plan on doing now after we get off the phone?
I'm gonna, if I've got time. Let's see what time it is here. After we get off the phone, I'm gonna finish getting ready and go to my 9 to 5, what I call my slave job. For It's a Saturday, but I got to work overtime, so I'll take the money. you know.
Now, what about the future with any more books in the works? Deacon's Legacy. I know you got some any events
Um,
coming up for the motivational speaking.
not as of now. I'm putting together a list of some local places. I'm trying to get, like more of these podcasts and things to get it spread out. I do have, like, what, if you will, a call to action that, if anybody has, knows of any places, please, get a hold of me and let me know, or send my information over to them, because the speaking events is going to be my bread and butter. I like to do the coaching if I can as outreach for free, especially because there's a lot of people that can't afford it. But I can't do that if I'm not, getting the right information to the masses, like rehabs and things like that. So I am working on going to be. Somebody told me don't write another book, but this one's going to be a lot longer. But I am going to write a third one eventually. I'm going to be starting on it soon, but this one's going to take me quite a bit longer because I am self-published. I do everything through Amazon. However, um, the third one's going to be a little bit more personal. It's going to deal with a lot of about addiction and how it relates. Because I mean, understand that everybody's addicted to something, especially like social media, and I just want to really delve on the fact that the stigmas and how people treat addicts and things like that, because everybody's addicted to something one way or another, and nobody's perfect. So it's going to deal a lot with being non-judgmental, bringing a lot more compassion to the world. Try to approach it with a lot more compassion, because addiction is not racist, or it's not specific. It'll take anybody, right circumstances. So it's going to deal with a lot about that, but it's going to take me a little bit longer time with my time constraints of work, and just how I want to go about it. And it's going to be a lot longer book. This one's going to be, you're going to have to sit down and read this one. So if you got a short attention span, you better buttercup, because but it's going to be important. It's going to be relatable. So as far as the company goes, I'm just going to keep going and build it up. I'm going to change up the website a little bit, to deal with more of the speaking services and focus on that a little bit more, but still have the coaching aspect to it. But I do all this stuff by myself, so it's a work in progress. I built the website, wrote the books, started the company. I do everything by myself, plus work the full-time job. So just bear with me, folks. It's going to take some time, but you'll see the changes. So keep focused. I actually have a blog on the website too, but I haven't been able to post on it because I'm doing 30,000 things at once. And once in a while I'll write another article and I'll get it posted. But it's all about, there's, like I said, there's 24 hours in a day, and I use the most of it I can, but sometimes I don't get to everything. So.
Well, and that's just it. Well, our schedules are a little booked up some days, and it's nothing personal. We can get to you when we do, and that's just kind of how it goes,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
when it comes to your books that you've already have published and the one that you are looking to publish, are you wanting to get an audiobook done?
Absolutely. Actually, I thought about doing this because I've had the recording software on my computer, but I just don't. I don't have the really time to sit down and mess with a full audiobook. But yes, I do want to turn in an audiobook because I actually have a children's book as well that I wrote that is only on ebook. It was to get the creative juices flowing for writing. It's also on Amazon, but I definitely want them to go because a lot of people listen to audiobooks, and I want to get all three of them on audiobooks and possibly the new one as well. So, because if somebody doesn't have time to sit and read it, they can listen to it. So it's that would be huge.
Well, Mike, did you know that I narrate and produce audiobooks for Amazon?
Yes, I sure did.
Well, I can certainly
Yep,
help you out with getting that done and set up for you, bud.
that would be great. That would be great. It would be much appreciated because I'm good at a lot of things, but some things I just don't want to deal with.
No, and that's completely it. So, and I'm kind of the same way some days, and sometimes it's just, well, I don't feel like reading a book, but hey, if I can get paid to read it, why not?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've thought about narrating it myself too, but there again it goes the time constraints. Eventually I'm going to be, because once I get this settlement from that old job, because I put an EEOC case because I'm tired of people running over me. So once that gets settled, I'm going to be doing some commercial real estate and things like that. Just investing in my future and the company's future, and trying to get more people involved as well. So you know, um, I've had interactions with people that are close to Dean Grazioso and Tony Robbins and things like that. So I'm getting there, but I need to, what I'm doing is focus on certain areas, and then I'm gonna definitely, outsource things like the audiobook and stuff to other people, if I can. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's completely fair. And when it comes to the audiobook, just because for just to help you out, we can do it a royalty share,
absolutely. I would be 100% okay with that.
right? So that helps you out. You don't have to pay me an arm and a leg to make for a per finished hour rate. But yeah, no, I've got no problems helping you out with that. If or finding another narrator if you don't particularly want my voice for it.
Oh, no, I don't mind. Like I said, that Canadian voice feels right at home because living in Michigan for so many years, I met a lot of Canadian people, and it's kind of just, I don't live in the state no more. I grew up in the South, but it's just the state grew on me. It really did. I miss it. I know myself. I can't go back. I can't be around that mess. So, so
Well,
I do what's best for my life.
you just have to ask, and then you know I'll play it up for you there, eh?
Or waking up to that. I about died laughing on that. So,
For sure,
oh
but
man,
I fucking send it right there for you.
that's great. And so it's really cool for me because down here, I'm starting to get that Southern accent back that, I lost. Everybody down here is like, well, you can still kind of hear the Northern part, but it's going away. But then I talk to people up North and they're like, oh yeah, you can definitely hear you've been back down South. I said, well, that's where I grew up. This is my home. This is my heart.
And it's funny
So,
because when I was playing one of your voice messages to me, my wife overheard it and she looks over and I was like, yeah, can you tell he's from Kentucky?
yeah, like I said, I was born in Georgia and spent most of my life in New Mexico and Texas. And when I was a kid, when we moved to New Mexico from Texas, I even got made fun of for having that Texas Southern accent.
Oh,
And but it's just I don't mind it. It's just one of them things that you kind of go with the territory. And there's other people that I listen to, and I can hear they're more back hills and what they call the hollers here. You can definitely tell they've been there many years. So, but yeah, it's all. I just love people, and getting to meet different cultures and different people and their ways of life, and it's a good life experience.
no, that's great, Mike. I really appreciate what you're doing there. I appreciate you finding me and reaching out, and I just appreciate you all around. You're an awesome guy, man.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you as well because this is to me, this is an honor, just to be able to, because I know you guys are busy, and I've pitched a lot of podcasts, and like I said, I've only done 6 in the last year, but that's more than what most people do. But I only pick the ones that really align with what I'm trying to do in my message, because it's kind of silly for me to go on a podcast that has something to do with nutrition and health and wellness and has nothing to do with mental health, so I only pitch the ones that, align with my purpose and things like that. But it saves a lot of time and a lot of confusion for people, and, and it still gets the message out. So
Well, that's exactly it. You got to play to your strength and play and find the appropriate platform to put it on, right?
absolutely. And I tell people all the time, I have a lot of life experience. If you can't see, I do this because I've experienced it. I know these things because I've lived it. What better person to learn from? Because I've had a lot of people be apprehensive, saying, "Oh, well, I know you, so I don't want to be some science experiment." No, it's not a science experiment for me, because especially addicts and people with trauma are very untrusting. Why wouldn't you want to learn from somebody that's been there and done it and overcome it? And that's kind of, it's starting to come around. People are starting to understand what I mean by that. I'm not trying to, talk down nobody, because I have no place to judge. I've done some really bad, ugly things in my life, but I don't let it define me. It's not who I am, So, and that's the important part. You don't have to let your past define you.
Well, no, that's exactly it. You don't have to let it define you. You just have to try and get over it. And if you can, that's great. If nobody else can, then that's fucking their problem.
Right, absolutely. Because I know me, I don't want to live a miserable life and be an asshole all the time. I only want to be an asshole part of the time.
Only when you need to be, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Mike, we're coming up to the end of our session here, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
why don't
that's
we?
okay. I got to get to work, get ready for work anyway. So,
Well, how about you give our listeners one last message of hope or piece of advice you think would be most beneficial?
reach out if you're feeling this way. Get the help. Find somebody, because there are compassionate people that want to help and that will not judge you. And if they can't physically help you, or you can't afford it, a real good person will lead you to someone who can. My thing is, I try to help individual people before profit. Like, that's why I'm trying to base my business on business to business, because there's people out there that can't afford it. But also, don't let that stop you, because if I have to make money, I'm not gonna. I'll work with you. I don't care if it's $1 a week. If you need that help, I'll put the time into it. But I do a lot of stuff for testimonials as well. We can work something out, but don't let money or anything hold you back. If you need help, reach out, because it's out there. Don't let it stop you. So,
No, exactly, and that's basically what I'm here for as well, right?
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, this has been awesome, Mike. I really appreciate this. You get yourself ready for work, and we'll keep in touch. Well, we'll touch base soon with the episode and anything else. Okay?
All right, sounds good. And you have a great day. Be blessed.
You as well, brother. Cheers.
All right, bye bye.
Bye now. And that was Mike Jarrell, everyone. Support Mike by checking out his website, TikTok, or on Facebook. You can also support Mike by checking out his books on Amazon. This has been the Trauma That Binds series, Aftermath of Addiction with Mike Jarrell, a segment of Living Vicariously. Production copyright 2024 by Tim Douglas, proprietor of Red Script Studios. All rights reserved. If you love what we do and would like to support, please consider donating, becoming a patron, or by purchasing studio merchandise. If you have a story you would like shared, please consider reaching out to Red Script Studios. We would love to connect. Until next time.